Hi everyone, I'm Virtual Andrew Quinn. And I'm Andrew Quinn too. And yes, I'm also Andrew Quinn. Well, sort of. All of us on this screen are virtual versions of me. It was actually video game versions of me that started me thinking about my focus area for this project. That is, how we can integrate virtual reality with our lives. Games are of course one way that we do this, but I became interested in other uses for virtual reality such as simulation and training, education, historic recreations, and virtual travel. The investigation process has been an interesting one. Some of the material I knew a bit about already, but much of it has been genuinely new to me. The process also inspired me to think about where all this virtual reality technology might be taking us. So, let's take a look at the key points of my project. Firstly, what is virtual reality and what's all the fuss about? This project is investigating how we can integrate virtual reality with our lives. What you are seeing is a demonstration of just that. I'm an avatar, a virtual version of me that I created in the online world Second Life. You can read more about this in my paper. To be quite honest, Second Life is a little bit lame compared to the current generation technologies. But in 2005, Second Life began to receive a lot of media attention because it was the first accessible virtual world environment that appeared to offer a glimpse into the future. Millions of people got involved, and it allowed them to virtually simulate aspects of real life in a virtual world. People could buy things, make things, and do things virtually. Real-world businesses, schools, and universities got involved. And people's avatars even got virtually married and had virtual children. Weird, huh? Unfortunately, it could not really live up to the hype of simulating real-world experiences due to current technical limitations, but what it did show was that many real-world people were inspired by the possibilities of virtual reality. Okay, some quick definitions. We can consider the definition of virtual reality as being a computer-simulated environment that can simulate physical presence in places in the real world or imagined worlds. Virtual reality can recreate sensory experiences, which include virtual taste, sight, smell, sound, touch, etc. Computer-mediated reality refers to the ability to add to, subtract information from, or otherwise manipulate one's perception of reality. This is technology like Google Glass. Simulated reality is really a hypothetical concept that considers that reality can be simulated to a degree that is indistinguishable from actual reality. Think The Matrix. But before we get too carried away thinking about whether we should take the blue pill or the red pill, I'd like to look briefly at where our current virtual reality technology has come from. Okay, most writers on this topic seem to agree that computer-based virtual reality started with some US military research in the 1950s. One guy in particular, Ivan Sutherland, is now considered to be the grandfather of virtual reality. He came up with the first virtual reality head-mounted display systems. In the 1960s and 70s, his work at the University of Utah inspired a new generation of researchers who pretty much invented three-dimensional computer graphic imagery. You may not have heard of many of these people, but you've probably heard of the companies they went on to help form, such as Adobe, Silicon Graphics, Atari, and Pixar. In the 80s and 90s, virtual reality development started to shift from industrial and military projects more towards entertainment and leisure. In the 1990s, the success of films like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park inspired filmmakers to invest heavily in 3D computer-generated imagery technology. Similarly, the computer games industry has driven developments in virtual reality technology. In fact, computer games are probably the most common way that most of us interact with virtual reality in our everyday lives. I could probably go on and on about the significance of computer games development to virtual reality. However, I shall refrain. Suffice to say that when your grandma played her first game of Wii Bowling, she was probably incorporating virtual reality into her life for the first time. Perhaps I will mention that the military now make use of computer games for training purposes. Last year, the US military offered $45 million to games developers to work on new and improved training simulators for its Army and Navy personnel. The military command has taken this initiative because their recruits were not taking their current simulators seriously, due to the fact that their home game consoles featured better quality virtual reality simulation. Go figure, hey? On to some other ways we're starting to use VR. Education and training is an obvious area for virtual reality application. Essentially, any learning activity that has a high risk or high cost component in real life may be safer and or cheaper if first simulated in virtual reality. Another related area is medical training. Virtual reality is increasingly being used to train medical personnel. Some help to teach staff how to orient themselves in busy hospitals, and others allow surgeons to literally practice brain surgery. Let's look at virtual reality in health and well-being. You may be familiar with the movie Avatar, where a paraplegic marine gets to run, jump, and play again with large blue aliens thanks to virtual reality. Perhaps pure science fiction, but we are already starting to use virtual reality to help the physically disabled. This can include virtual worlds, such as Second Life, that allow the disabled to experience virtual physical spaces and social interaction. Virtual reality can also help those suffering from mental health problems, such as phobias and post-traumatic stress disorder. This technology can provide a way to face their fears in a controlled, safe environment. For example, fear of heights. Here's another current use for virtual reality. I'm currently standing in a recreation of an ancient Jordanian village that has not existed for over 3,000 years. I can get a real sense of the way these people lived by seeing their world from their perspective. Museums and historic organisations are doing things like this all over the world. Cool, hey? And if I can visit ancient places, why not visit current places virtually? Already I can zip around the streets of the world in Google Maps Street View, but some people are already looking at the possibilities of using 3D goggles for virtual tourism. So, what about these 3D goggles? Earlier in the year, I went to the Big Day in IT Careers Conference as part of a group from our school. It was here that I got to experience the Oculus Rift firsthand, and I couldn't believe it. The Oculus Rift is a pair of 3D virtual reality goggles. Yes, we've had virtual 3D reality goggles before, but the big deal about the Oculus Rift is that it offers high-quality images and is now more or less affordable and accessible by average people. Most of the uses for virtual reality that I've outlined can be radically improved when viewed through an immersive device, such as this. I can imagine lots of great potential for this device. And apparently, so too can Facebook, because they bought the technology earlier this year for $2 billion and are currently developing stuff. Sony too are hot on the trail and are working on their own similar device for the PS4. While there are some inevitable hurdles to get over, such as prolonged exposure problems, the amount of money being spent suggests that 3D goggles are the next big step for virtual reality. We'll have to watch this space, as they say, but maybe through goggles. So, it begs the question, what will the future hold for virtual reality? In my opinion, it may ultimately end up as a form of simulated reality, a simulation so real that you can't determine the difference between it and real life. But unlike The Matrix, I don't think this is necessarily something we should fear. Consider a simulated reality where you can take a cruise on the SS Titanic, stop off for a holiday on the moon just before it hits an iceberg, take guitar lessons off Jimi Hendrix, and throw a frisbee onto a beach to an AI version of your great-great-grandfather. Of course, we should be careful looking at virtual goggles through rose-tinted glasses, but it should not always be assumed that Skynet will buy up all the technology and enslave us via their evil robotic overlords. Perhaps the 4th century Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi put it best when he hypothesized the idea of a dream simulating reality. He phrased the problem as the well-known butterfly dream, which went as follows. Once, Zhuangzi dreamt he was a butterfly flitting and fluttering around, happy with himself and doing as he pleased. He didn't know he was Zhuangzi. Suddenly, he woke up and there he was, solid and unmistakable Zhuangzi. But he didn't know if he was Zhuangzi who had dreamt he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming he was Zhuangzi. Between Zhuangzi and a butterfly, there must be some distinction. Thank you.